In 2024, Volkswagen did something it had never done in its 87-year history. It threatened to close factories inside Germany, not in some far flung subsidiary, at home, in the country that built it. And most of the world treated it as a labor dispute, a negotiation, a headline for a week, then gone. It was a symptom. So here is the question the German establishment does not want to answer. What if the economic miracle was never a miracle, but a machine, very specific and very fragile, that ran on conditions that no longer exist? For 70 years, Germany ran the most successful industrial model in the developed world. Cheap energy flowing in, high value goods flowing out, and a whole continent organized around the assumption that Germany would always be the engine. And right now, quietly, that engine is seizing. This is not a recession. A recession is a dip. What is happening to Germany is structural, the slow disassembly of the model itself. I'm going to map the 5 fractures hollowing out Europe's largest economy. The reason this matters far beyond Germany is simple. Germany is the load-bearing wall of the Eurozone. If the wall cracks, the question isn't whether Germany struggles, it's what happens to everything built on top of it. So, Fracture 1. The end of cheap energy. The German miracle had a secret ingredient. Not engineering excellence, but cheap Russian gas. For decades, Germany made a quiet bet. Import cheap Russian energy, feed it into heavy industry, and sell the output to the world. That bet worked spectacularly, right up until February 2022. When Russia invaded Ukraine and the pipelines went cold, Germany lost more than a supplier. It lost the foundation of its cost structure. German industrial electricity prices are now among the highest in the developed world, running multiples of what competitors pay in the United States or China. So consider BASF, the largest chemical company on Earth, headquartered in Germany for over 150 years. Its flagship site in Ludwigshafen is so large it has its own internal railway network. And BASF is now building its next generation of capacity not in Germany but in China. They did not announce they were leaving Germany, they simply decided to grow somewhere else. That is what deindustrialization actually looks like. Not a dramatic exit, but a quiet decision to put the future somewhere cheaper. This is the crack that opens all the others. So, Fracture 2. The customer who became the competition. For 30 years, China was the best thing that ever happened to German industry. A billion-person market opening up, hungry for precisely what Germany built: premium cars, industrial machinery, and precision equipment. Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes built entire business models on Chinese demand. At the peak, Volkswagen sold more cars in China than in Germany. China was not a secondary market, but the single largest one they had. Here's the irony. The same relationship that made German industry rich now threatens to destroy it. China did not stay a customer. It studied, absorbed, subsidized, and built. In electric vehicles, the industry that defines the next generation of transportation, China did not catch up. It leapt ahead. So watch the reversal. The German automaker arrived in China to sell cars. It now finds China building better, cheaper electric vehicles, not just for the Chinese market, but for export into Europe itself. The customer learned the trade and became the competitor. Germany was structurally too slow to see it because the combustion engine it dominated was the very thing it had the least incentive to abandon. When your largest customer becomes your most dangerous competitor in the technology that defines the next century, that is not a policy gap. That is an existential one. So, Fracture 3. Germany's demographic problem is worse than the conversation admits. The country has one of the lowest birth rates in the developed world, sustained over decades, which means the damage is already baked into the next 30 years. The workers retiring over the next 15 years have already been born. The workers who would replace them have not, and at this point cannot be. Germany faces a vice, a shrinking workforce contributing less on one side, and a growing population of retirees drawing more on the other. The famous German engineering tradition depends on a deep bench of skilled technical workers. That bench is graying out, and there are not enough young people entering the trades to refill it. Every country says immigration solves this. In theory, it can. But Germany needs enormous, sustained, high skilled immigration just to hold its workforce flat, and immigration at that scale collides directly with a political reality that is moving in the opposite direction. The politics are hardening exactly when the economics demand the opposite. The demographic fracture isn't only about pensions, it is about whether Germany still has the human capital to run a precision manufacturing economy. A factory needs engineers. An aging country runs out of them. So, Fracture 4. Germany got extraordinarily good at perfecting things that already existed: the internal combustion engine, the industrial machine tool, the chemical process. Incremental excellence, making the known thing better than anyone else on Earth. For a century, that was enough. But the last 20 years rewarded platforms, software, and network effects, not precision manufacturing. The dominant technology platforms are American. The dominant electric vehicle and battery scale is increasingly Chinese. Germany, one of the four largest economies in the world for most of this period, did not produce a single technology giant of comparable scale. The deficit is not a failure of execution. Germany still builds extraordinary things. The problem is that it optimized for the wrong century. The German model was built for stability and the perfection of the existing, the exact opposite of the fail fast, winner take all logic of the digital economy. A culture built to never break things is structurally bad at inventing things that break the rules. So, if the next economy is built on platforms and software, and your entire industrial culture is built on perfecting hardware, you are not positioned for the future. You are defending the past. So, Fracture 5. This is the most German fracture of all, because it is a fracture made of discipline. In 2009, Germany wrote a rule directly into its constitution: the Schuldenbremse, the debt brake. It strictly limits how much the federal government is allowed to borrow. It was designed as a national commitment to fiscal prudence, and as a philosophy, it is deeply, characteristically German. Here is the trap: Germany now faces the largest investment requirement in its post war history all at once. Germany needs to rebuild its energy system, digitize an economy that fell behind, modernize a military it neglected for decades, and fund the transition of its auto industry. Every one of these requires massive public investment, and the country has written into its own constitution a rule that makes that investment extraordinarily difficult to finance. Here is the bind. The moment Germany most needs to spend is the exact moment its own constitution says it cannot. The discipline that protected it in good times has become the straitjacket that paralyzes it now, and amending the Constitution requires a political supermajority that the current fragmentation makes nearly impossible. This is not a recession Germany can borrow through, or a downturn it can stimulate away. It is a self imposed inability to act, written into its own founding document. That is Fracture 5, and it is the one that turns a hard problem into a trapped one. Connect them, because individually, none of these is fatal. Together they compound. Energy costs erode the competitiveness the Chinese market once absorbed. A shrinking workforce limits the capacity to respond. The absence of a technology base closes the escape route, and the debt brake ensures the government cannot fund its way through any of it. Five fractures, reinforcing each other, all at the same time. And here is why this is not just a German story. Germany is roughly a quarter of the Eurozone economy, its largest budget contributor, and the credit anchor behind European borrowing. So when economists worry about France's debt, they are assuming Germany stays strong enough to hold the center. Take that assumption away, and the math underneath the entire European Union changes. For 70 years, we called it the German economic miracle. But a miracle implies something that shouldn't have been possible. What Germany actually had was a machine: cheap Russian energy, an open Chinese market, a young workforce, and a stable world that rewarded perfecting the existing. every one of those conditions is now gone. So, the real question is this: can Germany reinvent itself? Or was the miracle just a perfect set of conditions that will never line up again? Make your case in the comments and name the fracture you think breaks first. I'm Eddie. Subscribe for more videos mapping how history shapes modern power.